all so much for being here. My name is Bonnie, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Poetry Event Coordinator here at Brookline Booksmith. Today, it is my pleasure to host three incredible poets, Miriam Levine, Tom Driscoll, and Matthew Sisson, for our third Thursday's poetry reading series. Before I do introductions, I have just a few housekeeping notes. Firstly, copies of the poets' three books that you can see here are available for sale at the back counter over there. I encourage you to support the poets in whatever way you can, whether that means buying a book. Being here is a huge way to support us, so saying nice things to them after the reading. But thank you all so much for being here. Secondly, please keep your phones off or on silent for the duration of the reading, and thanks for being respectful of our poets' work. Also know that the event is being live streamed on this little iPad contraption right here. Hello to YouTube. Our audience members shouldn't be visible to our YouTube live stream viewers, but if you don't want to be live on YouTube, don't stand in front of it and you will be good to go. Finally, we will have a Q&A at the end of the event, followed by a signing. So please hold questions until the end, but definitely have them ready to go. This event is part of our monthly reading series taking place on the third Thursday of each month here at Brookline Booksmith. We've got future poetry events lined up that we're really excited about and will be going on our website soon, so feel free to check us out at brooklinebooksmith.com if you are interested. And now, boring stuff out of the way, fun part, introductions. Matthew Sisson's poetry has appeared in journals ranging from the Harvard Review Online to JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. He's been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and read his work on NPR's On Point. His book, Please Call Me Moby, was published by the Pecan Grove Press of St. Mary's University, San Antonio, Texas. He is also the former poetry editor of the trade journal Modern Steel Construction. Matthew, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you for sharing your work. And of course, Tom Driscoll is a poet, columnist, and essayist who lives and works in Lowell, Massachusetts with his wife, artist Denise Driscoll. He's published three previous collections of poetry, Odd Numbers, Instead of Peace, and Absent Singing, as well as several chapbooks, a collection of song lyrics, and a selection of short prose. The Campion of Doubt is his latest collection, which came out last summer, so congratulations on your new book. Tom is the recipient of honors and awards, including the Robert B. Cullen Poetry Prize for his poem Duty Leave Home. His poem, This Isn't the First Time, received third place in the Frank O'Hara Prize Poetry, and Notes on Demolition was selected as an editor's choice for the Allen Ginsberg Prize. You can find his work in places like Oddball Magazine, Carcosa Reviews, Scapegoat, Patterson Literary Review, the Worcester Review, and others. Thank you, Tom, so much for being here. And of course, last but not least, Miriam Levine is the author of Forget About Sleep, her sixth poetry collection, winner of the 2023 Laura Boss Narrative Poetry Award. Another collection, The Dark Opens, was chosen by Mark Doty for the Autumn House Poetry Prize. Her other work includes Devotion, a memoir, and In Patterson, a novel. Her work has appeared in American Poetry Review, the Kenyon Review, Paris Review, and Plowshares, among others. She is a winner of the Pushcart Prize, is a fellow of the NEA, and a grantee of the Massachusetts Artist Foundation. She splits her time between Florida and New Hampshire. And for more information about her work, you can check out her website, miriamlevine.com. Thank you, Miriam, so much for being here. Let's give our poets a warm welcome. We are in for a treat.
Let's see how this works. Can everyone hear me? Mic working okay? I might move this over a little bit so I can step in front of the podium. Good to see all of you here. Thanks to Bonnie for organizing and taking care of the details. Even for a reading like this, there are a lot of details. And thanks to the Booksmith. And thanks to the muse of poetry. Nina McLaughlin, in a recent review of Jean Valentine's poems, said that the job of poetry and the language of poetry is to take us out of the poem, to take us somewhere else. So let's see if that happens. first poem in the book, Deeper, Darker. Everything bright will darken. This day, that star, this river. Little frill of blackberry flowers giving way to insistent fruit. The boy's voice, deeper, darker. Our sky, the swelling cloud, leaf and the shadow of the leaf. Bird and the bird's cry. It's late, we're not done with love. The next poem is called June of Roses. We're not in June yet, but we're heading toward June, right? Inevitably heading toward June. It's dedicated to the poet Nadia Tuene, who died too young, and I quote her in the poem. With eyes open or closed, today or tomorrow, whether night or day, I can see a horizon silver shift back and forth. I can hear her words, "O gardener of memory, plant a flower of certitude." Certain is the memory of a spider like a crochet stitch on the pillow's edge. My son's first cry, my nipple, his mouth, my ready milk. Clear is the white sycamore against sea blue skies, buds set for spring. Certain is the scent of June, June of roses, when I went out with empty hands, without a purse, or a ticket, or a locket, my socks communion white, my cotton blouse soft as a flower. But aren't those great lines? Those are her lines. O gardener of memory, plant a flower of certitude. Just perfect. And those lines of Tuene's take me out of the poem to somewhere else, but don't ask me where. I have to say that I'm very proud to assert that my book would be banned in Florida. Just the cover, right, would not make it. Florida, where I live for part of the year, has the highest number of, it's in the hundreds of books that have been banned. Luckily, we have Brookline Booksmith, and luckily we haven't been put in jail yet, not yet. So I think this poem might be banned, who knows? It's called First Lover. The lover somehow we never forget. This one comes back in the dream. No matter how many times I was sure I would forget him, I see him sitting in an armless wooden chair, his head above the wooden rail, the small of his back pressed to the wooden splat, a foot hooked on the spindle. There's not a fleck of gray in his hair that shines like hot tar. Not a line in his face, white as a church candle, licked by flame. Licked by flame, his shocking pink lips. His was the first body I knew deeply, more deeply than my parents. I wish he were naked, and I could see again the oblique muscles and swelling sex. But he's dressed in black sweats, waiting for the race to begin, while the voices of other racers swarm around us. But how will he run in those polished black leather shoes? The slippery soles are perfectly new. He does not make a sound. I grasp his ankle and ease his foot off the spindle. His head is turned to the side, angling toward his shoulder, as if he were shy of being so dead. But I was the one who brought him back in this form. If this were the promised afterlife, he would appear in his ravishing shape and rise again. Can't escape. You think you forget it, and then they come back in dreams. And I think they come back in dreams because this is one person, I'm getting a little out of the poem now, that I really, in a sense, never apologized or made amends to. So there's unfinished business, and the unfinished business, who knows, maybe it'll continue for eternity or yield another poem. So thank him for that. The next poem is dedicated to Richard Wayne Penniman, otherwise known as Little Richard, the architect of rock and roll. This spring, and I'm talking to myself in this poem, as we poets sometimes do, as many people do. This spring, your whole inner life is Little Richard. You surrender to his octave jumping high notes as he shakes out the fingers of his glittering coat. His boots glitter too. How narrow those feet and those wigs. How full. Is that your hair? He's asked. It's mine. I bought it. Decade by decade, you see him age, but you are convinced he beats back time. And always his beauty endures. Bare-chested, under his cape, he strolled through Heathrow. Man drop his cup of coffee when he see me. I give him the peace sign. Now he's streaming through earbuds into your brain. And you know, I'll always be your slave until I'm buried in my grave. Your step is easy as you walk south on Meridian Avenue to your allotment in the Victory Garden and the blooming zinnia called Zowie, streaked crimson and gold. You keep time with his time, and the blooms also seem to sway with the beat. At night, you see him preach about his Jesus, and you watch his funeral. He believed he would live forever with Jesus. You confess you read the auction catalog of his things. You don't want his flaming clothes, but you covered his passport. The photo of him with the impossibly high pompadour and ink-lined mustache, page after page, stamped with seals of countries he entered and never left. Little Richard. Already here. I've said this before, that feeling we have sometime that we want and we want and we want and we want more. That feeling of dissatisfaction. So I thought I would write a poem that's called Already Here. And put down the next cookie that I want to bite into. Already here. What I might have wished for is already here. The long, loose line of pelicans flying north that seems to break but comes together. The man on the sidewalk near 6th Street, always the unlit cigar in his hand, guarding a promise. The tram swishing through Flamingo Park, shaking out her curls, calling, darling, 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 I'm here. Beautiful boys racing the spongy track, backs shining with sweat, wave after wave, filming the sand with amethyst. Colors fading, the waves always and always returning. The flash of green parrots flocking, the egret balancing on the top of the hedge. Odor of cedar, the negligent, filmy curtain dragging on the sill. Casino ships on the horizon with no destination. The old woman who asked for directions to Alton Road and my correct answer. The young man who suddenly appears and says, I'm going your way. Already here, and I'm here. Union Street. This one is set in Concord, New Hampshire, where I'm living now, and it's the interior and it's night. Union Street. It's a love poem. The calm fall night when blazing leaves were invisible and the curtain of the living room window blurred the gold dome of the Capitol building, recognizable, though beautifully veiled. And 3 windows of the house on Center Street also came through, but these in pale blue. And I thought, everything is in its place, hushed and muted. Even the street. There was enough light in the room to see the rug's edge and the arm of your chair. I did not have to do anything but rest. The door to your bedroom was open, and your nightlight showed a familiar path I might have taken to watch you dreaming. The next to last poem that I'll read is November. These days, when wind wears itself out and the sun warms the sidewalk, bare throat days when white floss bulges from milkweed pods but does not blow away, and leaves float like scattered thoughts, when the hinge between fall and winter does not move. And those nights too, when long past midnight, Windows are flooded with light, and it seems everyone on this street is awake, tuned to something we cannot see, something I imagine faith to be. Faith to be. The last poem refers to the war, the many wars that are going on. It's difficult to write. I have a poet friend, a fine poet, Denise Duhamel, and who can handle what we used to call in school current events. As for me, I've always felt that the lyrical poem is a political act because it's not newspeak. But in this poem, the news gets in. It's called The Kidnapped Boy, and his name is Ohad, the kidnapped boy. Unlikely as it seems, Ohad still has his glasses. When the enemy lets him go, he runs to his father, who lifts him so high, Ohad's feet dangle, and his head fits the curve where the father's neck and shoulder meet. There are murmurs, ahs, nickers, whimpers, soft grunts released from the back of the throat. And I think this may be the best from our species, when joy takes the words out of our mouths. Thank you.
Miriam and I actually, and Joel, who's in the audience, are all participants in a regular workshop of poets, gathering of poets, and we were commenting today when we all got together. It was so nice to see each other in three-dimensional reality. I woke up this morning way too early. Get closer to the mic. How's that? Any better? Yeah, I woke up this morning way too early, probably a little nervous about today, or trying to think of a way to frame things. And the two words that started rattling around in the rock tumbler were family history. It's a word combination that I hear a lot in sort of clinical and diagnostic terms, but family and history are really, I think, what my book is all about. The way I describe it is, if I were to take a couple of teeth in the comb and rake them through this collection of poems, meaningful terms are family and history. History connotes some import of the past, living with us in the present moment. First poem I thought to read is actually a year ago. This book wasn't even quite out. I gave a reading in a space full of my wife's paintings. It was quite the dramatic backdrop. And I was able to point to the fact that when I met her, I was an architect and she was a graphic designer. And she taught me about using black foam core boards to put colored renderings on to make the colors pop. Something about that black brought the color forward. And this poem sort of harkens to that lesson as well. It's called Notes on Demolition for Denise. The grinning advice got from a mason friend of mine, and I told of our plans. was that in demolishing a chimney, one should start at the top and work their way down. Seriously though, with firm hammer strikes at the masonry, the old mortar will crumble, fall away. Pry the brick loose, one, then the next, then the next. He'd shown me the proper use of brick tones as well, how to carry enough each load for the tool to serve its purpose. The weight, the work, strangely pleasing the first few trips down the narrow stairs, 2 floors to the basement, where I staged out debris. Then I noticed one brick fall into the shaft I've opened. And I'm the clever one to realize it one less brick for me to carry. And soon I'm thrilled at the easy way whole courses hammer loose and drop into the deep stir of dust and dark. Such an elegant process, as if the chimney's stack effect reversed itself after 100 years, smoke rendering back onto flame. The brick will be waiting in the cellar to be sorted and stacked for hauling away, as I tell myself, so pleased with the ingenuity. Bounding down the stair to inspect, I stop, stare, dumbstruck. We'd set up camp in the first floor living room as nomadic urban pioneers, our bed and a television set, a microwave oven, the crib, though most nights our son slept between us. We lived like this a while, always the one room habitable while we tore apart the next. Now I am stunned and stopped, my gaze fixed on the scene, our ragged domesticity, rendered in seamless, sudden black. An eerie disreflection of light, dust fine as powder, black as coal, blacker. I thought the brick would fall clear. First one caught, then more. The shaft, then the plaster broke, breached, billowed black over it all. Beautiful, I tell you. Beautiful black snowscape, capture of light, claimed, subsumed into an anthracitic jewel surfacing of every form. The blinded clock, black. A chair, black. The trunk we use as a table. The crib, black. I know I must clean this all before you return. A refugee with our son and all our worries in tow. All that you carry. Even our daughter not yet born. And I know I must leave no telling traces, and that I'll only tell you carefully later what I see now. Years later, still, that this secretly, for me, has deepened every color since. As I say, this history notion, I guess, is, like I say, it's the comb I used to rake through this book, come up with a few things to read. This next one is called Always Sunday, and it sets itself in a specific point in time. After we finished tearing apart that house in Charlestown, we moved to Holliston. Lived there a number of years, made some very good friends, brought our family up from small to slightly bigger. This is called Always Sunday. Church bells ring. It is that always Sunday, back from the bakery uptown, the walk past habit and practice, right in the race of Catholics to their larger cars. The century is still beginning. Requisite war is underway. home and the house quiet, its structure low and aching at its open earth cellar of loose stone in the dark where the coal was once kept. To the mind of most neighbors, and despite their kind wishes, we still live in the murderer's house. They refer to the place with his name and not ours. They do not know how the smells of coffee and bacon and toasted bread rise up to find our children sleeping a dream in the wild nests we've allowed them. I'll soon call from the foot of that narrow stair, painted in odd and gorgeous plum color, one cracked tread mid-flight. I will warn them. I am starting the gates. I'm going to read a couple of poems. I realized as I was thinking about this that my father is a very central figure in this book. In fact, the title poem is about him, which I may get around to reading. But he was quite the character. He actually passed away about 24 years ago this week. But history was a big concept for him as well. In fact, I used to, am I getting short on time?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Well, my grandson is charming. Yeah, that happens. But my father didn't believe that in reading fiction. He said, why read things that aren't true? Read history, it's not true. But he used to like to argue about history as well. But this is a poem written to history. To history. I suppose all those who seek you bring their biases, bad habits of claiming to speak on your behalf, and I'm no better. I have my own theories about your narrative arc spanning different generations. How my father carried that jug of tears from his own father's life, both men abandoned to grief and guilt as children, left with that scald and scar of remaining, one mother dead, the other diseased, fathers each blind with blaming. Hard luck stories, Dad would tell me. There was more to you than that. And he would tell me I had a fine, steady hand as I poured whiskey and approached another of our stupid debates on your account. Man's inhumanity to man, the extraordinary accomplishments of one generation as opposed to another. Drink transmogrified pain to silly sickness, cloying sweet and unsteady talk of nations and ideals, wet ash on gray stone, chipped glass, sentimental music, vague and sour, bombast, nausea, arguing abstractions we neither of us grasped quite. And you, history, you were the queen of ultimate questions. You were the kept bitch of men claiming victory. You were a logical being, cruel, absurd, insistent, senseless. Our arguments borne out in repetition under the witness of his two disdaining cats. The gorgeous light of a low sun, late and glowing. That room, the scent of smoke, both of us burning. I think I will read the title poem for this collection. It's called The Campion of Doubt. While I'm on the subject of doubt. The Campion of Doubt. My father would announce to me every now and then in conversation, I've forgotten more than you'll ever know. Always a wry grin, pleased with himself, with the elegant formulation, that subtle trace of self-deprecation, along with the more pronounced teasing slight for his son. They could fill books with the things you don't know. That was the other turn of phrase, often followed upon the first. This sounds maybe crueler than it was ever intended, though my ignorance was indeed his meaning. Sometimes to soften the effect he'd have put on one of his comedic accents. He had a number of them. The French sophisticate, the precise German, a jolly Brit with a Cockney delivery, and another Englishman of most exquisitely refined diction. One of his favorites was a Jew, the voice vaguely rabbinical, appropriated from the stand-up of Meyer and Cohen, Mel Brooks. Just the beginning of some tension between us would need diffusing. He'd turn as if to someone invisible in the room and offer in that voice, "I taught him everything I know, and still he knows nothing." You might read the comment as insult, but you would be mistaken. I know, I was there. I heard it said, and I know how it was so much more importantly his confession, more resignation than prayer, but no less his blessing. I think I'm going to close with two more family poems. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Two? It was a few summers back. We went to California to visit my daughter. And we also ended up visiting some grand sequoia trees. This one's also kind of for Denise. She's kind of the hero in this one. We wait it's called a General Sherman's Keep. We wait by the gated park entrance, minding our daughter's anxious dog, the small, sweet mongrel rescue, just now thinking his girls might never come back. My wife and I have had our turn visiting the sequoia. Our daughter and her lover now take theirs. The dog's not allowed in near the monument trees. My wife is pleased with the small watercolor travel kit. The case unfolds neatly on her lap. The hinged pigment tray cover becomes a well for water on one side, a place for brushes to the other. She paints small, imperfect circles in gold sepia onto pocket-sized squares of paper. She paints and listens to what I do not know on her earbuds. She's absented herself in this way, even as we sit close together. Done this as much for my sake, I think, knowing I've pledged at least 3 journal pages each day. I have this moment to write, and she has gone that place she goes when working, thinking, or decidedly not thinking. The shapes at her brush tip, repeating and joining to find some pattern, a texture, some otherwise unnameable diagrammatic fact. That scary courage of hers, where honesty precedes understanding. She trusts what she does not know. Her daughter and her lover are due back. Soon, I console the dog. Dog ears factor, the same age as me. Okay, so one of the things that makes being here and reading this kind of a thrill is the fact that my son works here. And this is kind of like bringing this home to me. And if I can remember where I put home, yes, 20. When our son was probably 8 or 9, or my daughter was 5 or 6, we went someplace where there was sort of a day session on Native American indigenous culture. And they had a little segment in it where we talked about naming in that culture and how one earns that name, a given name. And this is about my son earning his name. It's called One Who Climbs Mountains. Windswept bare granite, a domed rock peak. My son, as if seated, struggling, inches himself across the stone. Wide-eyed in fear, the deafening wind could take him, cast him down. Years to come, we will laugh at the holes worn in the seat of his pants. My strange joy of watching him, terror and pride, the name he was given that day, One Who Climbs Mountains. Thank you.
Hi. I've been coming to the Booksmith since 1972, and now I'm very proud to say I have a book of my own. Very, very proud to see it on the shelf. I'm very interested in the biblical narrative, though I'm not a believer, particularly the book of Genesis, so I'll read a couple of those poems. This is Adam. I like to think of him in the garden, lonely, without yet knowing what loneliness is. He moves with a stride unencumbered by gravity. Or waist-high in ferns, though sometimes I hope a little gust of wind parts the green curtain. His chest is smooth, his nipples in proportion. I'm talking about the time before hell broke loose. No scar at his rib to mar the surface, that flat stomach unencumbered by an umbilicus. I watch him eating fruit, grapes, oranges, the juice running from his mouth. At the river, he kneels down on all fours, extends his neck giraffe-like, drinks. Some days he cups those perfect hands in the water. The animals line up calmly, unafraid. Elephant, zebra, rhinoceros. In defense of Eve. She knows the wind across her legs and nipples, the bowing of long-tailed holes beneath her feet. She favors honey, but has never been stung. She knows to lie with Adam is more beautiful than the call of the wood thrush or the song of a sparrow. What can she know of subtlety? She has no word for evil, has never seen anything like it flicking in the flare of the serpent's nostrils, cannot associate sharp claws with danger, sees only God's love in those frost-bitten eyes. Yes, she says, what can she really know of wrong? Very quickly, I went to my 35th college reunion, and one of my classmates had started T-Mobile with a bunch of other people, and they were honoring him in a big chemistry lecture hall, and I was jealous of the attention he was getting. So I said, screw him, I'll write a poem about the periodic table. So it's called The Elements. The periodic table lists atomic weight, sexual preference, boiling point, elemental symbol, phone number, and relationship with mother. Elements combine and reject each other purely on the basis of their outermost shell, spending eternity judging each other by their covers. The alkali metals are mendacious, narcissistic, overreactive, and sharp-tongued. Bonding, they form a whole range of nasty acids. The noble gases, fat or thin, bald or beautiful, never really share themselves with anyone. Take two hydrogens in menage a trois with one silken-skinned oxygen. The result is water, pure and simple. There are limits, of course. Carbon on all fours, ringing the floor in a daisy chain of pleasure with other loose elements, yields nothing but pollution and petroleum products. Some elements, even in these difficult times, remain monogamous. Sodium and chlorine, with just a little pinch here and a little pinch there, still manage to make salt. I read a book on the history of gold, and I got gold fever. And this is my gold fever poem. It's called Rolex. Oh, that weight cool in my hands, a heft like no other, the pull of gravity alone intoxicating. This watch sells itself, the clerk says. A Rolex with a presidential bracelet, 170 grams of solid gold. Can she hear my heart pounding, I wonder, like some character out of Poe? I take a Cadillac home, read it secretly in the bathroom, dream about my watch, wait to travel from store to store again to feel that mass on my wrist. Life is short, I convince myself, but overwhelming desire begins to fade to common sense. Still, I want a diamond at every numeral, rubies at the quarter points. Imagine young people watching me reach for a latte at Starbucks. It's beautiful, I say. It's about power, she replies without blinking. I take up gardening. 2 imitation ceramic pots, $12.95 a piece, 1 bag Miracle Grow potting soil, fertilizer bug spray, and then their own little cardboard ice cube tray, 6 Jetstar tomato plants, just old enough to be weaned. A little water and they'll be fine for the night. At home, we rush to settle my newlings in on the patio. The kids refuse to carry anything, but after a few threads and with the first raising of my voice, we fill and fertilize 3 to a pot so they won't be lonely. I admit they're not as much fun as a dog, but there's something to nurture, and there's no chance of them being high-strung or biting a neighbor. I'm happy. They look as if a professional had planted them there, but the wind picks up, and I realize they'll have to be staked and tied off, just like I was when I was a kid. I'm completely addicted to YouTube, and one night I watched a series of videos about the Canadian government teaching Canadian foresters their trade, if you can believe it. Anyways, this is my poem, Maintaining a Chainsaw. Keep the cutting chain razor sharp. After each cut, file the teeth to return the edge. Sharp teeth ensure smooth operation. Hard surfaces like divorce, child support, and midlife dating may require mid-cut sharpening. Check the filter. All kinds of particulates accumulate there. Lost loves, missed business opportunities, failed therapy and diets. To release the dust, tap the filter against a garbage can before sitting down to another dinner alone. A clean filter, like sharp teeth, is essential to chainsaw operation. Finally, grease the starter assembly. Nothing is more embarrassing than a saw that refuses to start at a parent-teacher meeting, collegial discussions, cocktail parties, and the like. Remember, a chainsaw, like a well-maintained knife, is a safe, efficient cutting tool. Sharpening significantly reduces kickbacks and self-inflicted wounds. How I came to solve millennia-old epistemological problems live simply by the numbers and control my eating. In Plato's epistemology, cast iron truth floats about in the sky. Aristotle believed we are addicted to knowledge, and David Hume proved the crowing of a rooster caused the sun to rise. I live simply by the numbers. Unzip the little bag my doctor gave me, load a disposable needle in the spring-driven lancet, tell myself it can't hurt any more than last night, and I'm ready for the first wounding of the day. Sometimes my blood needs encouragement to leave its happy home, so I squeeze and rub, a drop on the meter, and voila, my blood sugar level stacked, straightened, and counted a posteriori like Oreo cookie packages inventoried on a supermarket shelf. I'd like to get rid of the meter, stop the twice daily testing, but I've got to be sure my numbers are low. And besides, after all these years, I've come to love my feet and toes, don't want to lose them. So I've given up candy, take mine black, and I'll pass on the apple pie a la mode. Not much of that film is true. I've not learned to control my eating in any way. Okay, this is my father's death certificate. My father's death certificate reads, manner of death, accident, method of immediate disposition, burial, notes the Brezniak-Rodman funeral home we used, that he was 76 on his last birthday, that my grandparents were born in Russia, and even the address where my mother now lives alone. Slipped and fell on inclined path is the description of the accident, and Parkinson's disease is listed as a contributing factor. There are options for suicide and homicide and choices like cremation or donation we might have considered. There are places for months and days for those whose time was less than a year, and hours and minutes for those whose lives were shorter still. My address is there too, though there's no description of the drizzle that spring morning or the stilling sound his head made, opening to a page no one wanted to read, or of his pooling blood when he fell there on my front walk and died. We'll get through these dark ones, maybe. Visiting my ex-wife's grave, anger, and a simple syllogism. It's not the hastily executed, shallow type, so popular with serial killers and crimes of passion, scattered leaves and twigs barely covering the victim's mutilated body. In fact, she's alive. So am I. We will not be going together. Adam coined the F word just after the expulsion. There was plenty of anger on both sides of the gates. Buddha sat around for a lifetime, trying to get a handle on his, or was that suffering? My case is a simple syllogism. I did not control my anger, not her fault, so much for my marriage. This is my COVID poem. COVID. A man sits alone in the house he bought after his divorce. It is a bright house. Sometimes the sunlight helps. He listens to books on tape. They make good breakfast companions, excellent company at dinner. I don't know what happened, the wrong version. Excellent company at dinner. He favors memoir. He likes meeting new people. Comedy before bed. It makes getting into an empty one easier. He does not listen to fiction. Literary portrayals of personal struggle exacerbates his own, though he loves Moby Dick. The orchids he brought home from his mother's hospital still bloom. He waters them occasionally. Self-sufficient, he leaves them alone. The baseball. Scarred and torn, covered in mold, I found a baseball huddled against the curb, a gray midwinter day, too cold for outdoor play. Had it been lost during father-daughter pitching practice by a little leaguer, hit out of the park by Ted Williams, Fenway is only 8 miles away. Then I read Made in Mexico. It was obvious. The ball had crossed oceans, braved heat and cold, had risked everything to come to America, to play America's greatest game, the American dream. We have enough baseballs, I thought, made right here in the USA. What was one baseball to me? I have my own problems. I tossed it back. Fostering an elephant. A golden retriever or a Siamese cat would have been ideal. We live in a small house with a smaller backyard, but for the elephant, it was us or the poachers. We took her in. Oh, I'd say 900 pounds. She's only a baby. Drinks gallons of milk. We go directly to a dairy. So far, no one has complained about the late-night tanker truck deliveries. I think the neighbors are jealous. The kids are wild about her. Walk her without complaint. They promise to keep the yard clean. When the constant trumpeting began, we piled into the minivan, rushed her to the vet. She said there was nothing wrong with the elephant physically. Turns out elephants are matriarchal. I think she missed her family. Lately, she seems to be settling in with mine. I'm crazy about her too. Built her a house out back. When it's warm, she sleeps there. She's smart, easy to train, remembers everything. Never has to be told things twice. There are shower heads. There are shower heads that could hang over a dining room table by Eames or Gary. Some like Victorian sconces. Shower heads to clear acne, to soothe aching muscles, one to experience falling rain. The phone light can be lifted off the receivers for better access to who knows what. Mine's not too elaborate, though sometimes when I'm covered top to bottom with a fragrant soap, anticipating hot water against my chilling skin, I remember those who also shivered in the cold, their punctilious hosts providing a bar of soap and a towel to some of the thousands of bathers who dropped by, to the many thousands and thousands who came in for a little freshening up after their long trade ride and before retiring for the night. And this is the title poem of my book. It's called Please Call Me Moby. I admit he has a certain amount of charisma, and I'm sorry about the leg, but it was either him or me. I've had plenty of bad moments over this thing too. I keep asking myself, why me? I've always minded my own business. God knows why he's still stalking me. I don't hold anyone's personal limitations against them, but it's clear the guy has problems. I've got a heart as big as an Eden kitchen, but I've had enough of his bad-mouthing. He's publicly cursed my name and accused me of being malicious. Who started this whole thing? For crying out loud, he was the one who attacked me. I'm not a vigilante, but I don't know how much more like this I can take. It's like the guy just can't take no for an answer. And this is my final poem, At the Opening. The landscape painter informs me his work hangs in major museums. His framer is the most important of the century and has worked on the problem of small paintings in white galleries for 50 years. I understand such vanity. I want my work to hang in the Norton Anthology, my every line numbered for future exegesis, my name, my art, forever bound with Shakespeare's. I want to be compared to a summer's day. Thank you.
Thank you for the three of you for sharing your work with us, being so generous tonight. I'd love to invite you up to the table. We are a little short on time, but we can commence our Q&A. So it is our audience's time to shine.
I hope you'll ask me a lot of questions.
All right. I'm gonna hand this off. So, you just turn the mics on by flipping them up like this. We just can't have them all three on at once. Yes, exactly. All right, so does anyone in our audience have any questions?
Tell me about the elephant. Where did that come from?
I was thinking, I've never owned a dog, and I was thinking about fostering a dog. I have bought a cat in the interim, so I said to myself, well, what the hell would it be like to foster an elephant? And that's where it came from, actually. I didn't want to make a commitment to a dog, so that's why I thought of the foster.
Any other questions from our audience?
Well, Matthew, I appreciated your part about the little tray of plant saplings.
Yeah.
And it comes across vividly today. I was glad you didn't shoot them as a pet. Little commercial. You didn't hear about the Christy Gnomes shooting her dog?
Oh, yes.
Bad joke.
Any other questions before
Let
we
me ask the audience something. Is anybody here writing poems? Why do you do it?
I'm not really sure, but I'm also an artist, so I can tell you what the difference is. Maybe that will kind of answer it. I feel like the art doesn't specifically, my visual art doesn't specifically say what I want to say. The mystery of it frustrates me. I want to say something that people will understand, and I know they'll understand. So that's a desire that I have, and that's what motivates me to write poetry.
Anybody else? Anybody else writing? Anybody else with a question? How about what's the meaning of the universe? Anybody want to ask us that?
Miriam, I'd love to hear if you want to answer your own question.
Why do I write?
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked Joel that question. I asked that question because it's certainly a question that I would ask myself. I really can't help it. And I've been doing it for a number of years. And I also think that the way we live often, we are alone. And we send out messages. Sometimes we're with people, sometimes we're not with people. And there are things we want to say that we can't say face to face. And so we write them down. Some of you might write in your notebook, some of you might write in your journal. As for me, I put it down in a poem. And what I hope for is that it will reach someone. And as Nina McLaughlin said, the job of a poem is to take you somewhere out of the poem. To let your mind and your thoughts trip out somewhere else. And that somewhere else can just be a question. It could also be nowhere. So I could talk a long time and bore the hell out of you about why I write, but I'm not going to do that. Tom, why do you write?
I think it's part of, sure, yeah. I think it's sort of part of how I metabolize experience and make sense of just being. Otherwise, there's a lot of. I think you have to shut yours off. Yeah. But otherwise, I think we live in a kind of unrelenting stream of noise, and so you have to sort of stop and try to metabolize it, or make form out of it. I find it's funny because I'm very familiar with Joel's work, and his poetry is fairly inscrutable at times too. And so it's interesting that I don't think just because it's language, it has to be discrete or defined. You know, it can be loose, it can be open to interpretation. I've learned a lot about being an artist. I think being an artist and being a poet are kind of the same cloth. And I've learned a lot about being an artist watching my wife work, because I've seen her be very content with what she's exploring as a notion in her mind and putting it into an art form, and she's perfectly content with the fact that someone else will have an entirely different experience of it when they encounter it at work. But you know, there's still some connection that has meaning, and we throw out these lines. Yeah, you're it.
I always wanted to create, and I failed at music and photography, so I took up writing. It's really up, and I found a wonderful teacher, and I didn't know anything about writing, and I stayed with her for 10 years, and she taught me the craft of writing, and then slowly I began to publish, and then when I had enough publications, I sent my book out, and it was published by a university in Texas, and that really is, I had a wonderful teacher, and she taught me the craft of writing, and so I stayed with writing.
Well, what a lovely note to end on, to create something out of nothing, and the urge to create and bring something new into the world. Really wonderful. Thank you to the three of you so much for being here. Everyone, let's give them. And thank you to our audience. for being here. It's lovely to have you, and it's lovely to see folks supporting poetry. It means a lot. Like I said earlier, if you'd like to buy a book, you can do so at the counter back there, and our poets are going to stick around in this table area to sign, if you'd like to get them signed. So thank you all again so much.
We'll be glad to sign books for you. Thank you for coming. Thanks for listening.
I get that. Thank you very much.